Thank you. Hi, how are you? I'm Emily Barnum. I'm one of the guidance counselors here at the high school. The microphone is actually more for the people at home, so we're mic'd so the video camera can hear us. So we'll try. I'm sorry, I seem to have lost my voice over the past 24 hours, so hopefully it doesn't go away too quickly. We will tonight, hi, how are you? Come in. Just a couple of housekeeping things regarding the handouts in our presentation. If you navigate to our website, we posted this presentation already online on our homepage. We've recently launched our Google site, and as multi-talented as we are not web designers yet. So we're trying to figure out the best way to post resources like links to handouts and presentations by film and PowerPoint slides and all that. But for the moment, it's living on the homepage, and it is called Junior Parent Night Handouts and Presentation. So you can easily navigate to that if there aren't enough handouts or if you want to reference it as we chat tonight. So again, my name is Emily Barnum. I'm one of the guidance counselors here. I'm joined with our other counselors. Oh, thank you. Is that better back there?
I didn't do anything. You didn't? I clicked the slide.
Can you all hear me in the back? Okay, great. So Rachel Sturma and the fabulous Ms. Mazzola over there. As you know, we break down by alphabet, so we are your counselors forever. So it's based on last name. Rachel has A through G, I have H through M, and Julie has N through Z. So tonight, you know, we really just try really hard to mention at every presentation, every kind of turn and step of the way, for all of our students, that our sort of motto and philosophy in our department is to embrace your path, whatever that is. You know, and in times we think about kind of everyone has their own path and everyone has their own pace, but I think in sort of reflecting on that idea, it's even potentially sort of more powerful for our students to really think about embracing that path, whatever that is. And setting their own pace as they kind of go along. So we know that, you know, for the past 5 years, our percentages hover between 80 to 85% of students who plan on going directly into a 4-year college or university, another 10% roughly for a 2-year college or university. And then, you know, within the past couple years, we've seen growing numbers of students doing a gap year. So that means just exactly what it sounds. So students are taking a year. It's not really a year off. It's really essentially a gap between your education path. So between the end of high school and then for our school, it has been 4-year university. And so generally students will opt for some sort of programming in that interim time. So in the past, we've had students do a semester at sea. In the past, we've had students travel across the country. One of our students last year was a ski instructor in Japan. So the experiences vary, and that's something that we're seeing an increase in student participation in a gap year for the mere fact that they can recognize within themselves that they aren't quite ready, again, to kind of go into the grind of the 4-year college or university. So we're seeing an uptick in that regard. Other paths for our students have been, you know, about 1% of our students will enlist in the armed forces at some point, whether that's through a college or university, or go directly through that path. Again, another sort of trade school or a licensure program. So or go directly to employment. A lot of students who have been working through high school, those tend to be students who also then choose direct employment. So the point of me mentioning that is really just that we encourage all students in their past to really embrace whatever that is. Because of the large percentage of students going on to a 4-year college directly, and because of all of the moving parts that you'll see tonight, and hopefully not be too overwhelmed, you'll see that it really is important that we start talking about the planning part early. And I know that you guys have seen us both sophomore year and freshman year, and things kind of tend to develop over the course of the 4 years of students being in high school. You know, we start talking about the transition from 8th grade to 9th grade, and then sort of more thinking about building some of those essential skills like communication skills, interpersonal skills, and kind of work on that, students' identity development, and then ultimately junior and senior year, really more of a clear focus on the post-secondary planning piece. So tonight's agenda, again, we'll be centering kind of the focus tonight will be on college admissions. We are going to do an activity. Yes, we will be asking for volunteers, so gear up. We will talk about what goes into the actual application. So I mentioned there are a lot of moving parts, so we'll be going over all of those parts. what to do before senior year. So it feels like it might be far away, but it comes really quickly. And us adults know that time accelerates as you get older, and it seems to be starting. And then Naviance and online research. So Naviance, for those of you that don't know, is our online web program for career and college searches and sort of exploration. As students get older and become seniors, the Naviance web portal becomes like what kind of we think about it as like a hub. So it will ultimately house all of the students' applications. It is connected to the counselors' recommendations. It's connected to the teacher recommendations. It has a resume builder in there, some questionnaires that are important for the process, all of those things which we'll begin to talk about and explain tonight. But it's really kind of, we like to think about that as a hub. And so you can, for you, parents have a login, students have a login. We like to try to really emphasize from this point forward, students are really paying attention to Naviance as kind of like their home base. So we'll be talking about Naviance and doing a little bit of online research. And tonight we are going to be joined by a current senior who's kind of right smack in the middle of the process / finishing it up, and her mom. So they're going to come talk a little bit about their experience and their journey along the way of post-secondary planning, and specifically sort of the college search and application process, and then and give you kind of some tips and tricks and recommendations, and also kind of some things not to worry about or not to stress out too much about. So I think it'll be nice for you to have an opportunity to ask some questions of some people who are very qualified and experts right now and can give you kind of that firsthand recent feedback. So that's our agenda for tonight. At this point, we are going to go to our activity. Now, juniors, I love seeing your faces here. Don't spoil it for your friends, our activity, because we're going to be doing this in junior seminars in a couple weeks too. But we need 8 volunteers.
You don't have to speak, right?
Yeah, you don't have to do anything.
Dad.
Hold a card. All right, come on up.
Come on up. 6 more. Come on down. Come on. All you don't have to speak or anything. You just have to hold up a card.
Hold the card up. You just have to familiarize yourself with the back of the card. Sir?
Great.
All right. Come on, don't be shy.
Come on. Don't be shy. Yep. I like it.
Jared.
Jared. Good doobie.
Just familiarize yourself with the back of the card. A couple more.
Come on.
7, a 4.0, and a 4.1.
Come on. Those are great.
These are great.
Brooke.
Margaret.
I'll do one.
All right.
Great, okay, all right, we're all set.
Awesome. Great. We're all set.
So just look at the back of the card.
Just hold them up high so everyone can see your GPAs.
So hold them up high. We, and this is a little bit tricky actually because we don't use the 4.0 scale, but, right? Yeah, so we are on the 100-point scale, but for, you will see for the sake of argument and in process, this will be very illuminating. I think so a 4.0 essentially is an A, and you know, a B is a 3.0, C 2.0, so you can kind of see where we're going with that. We are going to read some tidbits from our paper and ask our guests to participate accordingly. So you can go do number 1, Ms. Mazzola.
Okay, and so at the end, we would just kind of want your feedback and some thought process as to what the point of this is and, you know, what your thought process is as far as admissions go in this whole kind of, I hate to say game of getting into college, but sometimes that's kind of, it's a crapshoot. So keep that in mind as we go through this process. So you guys, number 1, read the back of your cards as I'm reading. If you have taken an exceptionally strong academic program, move up 2 spaces.
Great job. If you direct the gospel choir at your church, move up 1 space.
If you clearly stated that this college is your first choice by making an early decision, application, and commitment, move up 2 spaces.
If your intended major is psychology or pre-med, move back 1 space.
If your intended major is Greek, move up 1 space.
If you do not know any of your teachers well enough to ask for a recommendation, move back 2 spaces.
If, when you wrote your college essay, you forgot to change the name of your college when you were applying to, move back 3 spaces. Oh,
If you are a legacy, move up 2 spaces.
if you did not write the optional college essay, move back 1 space.
If the topic of your personal statement or the college admissions essay was sports as a metaphor for life, move back 1 space.
If you wrote your college admissions essay that was passed around the office because it was so good, move up 2 spaces.
If you plagiarized your personal statement and got caught, sit down, you're out of the competition entirely.
Bye.
Great job.
If you will be the first in your family to attend college, move up 2 spaces. Anyone? Anyone?
Any first generation?
First generation? Yeah.
No problem.
Keep coming.
Great job. If you attended an enriching summer program between your junior and senior years, move up 2 spaces.
If you come from a single parent household and must work part-time to help with expenses, move up 2 spaces.
If you have participated in no extracurricular activities, move back 3 spaces.
If you have participated in a significant community service project, move up 1 space.
If you are an Eagle Scout, move up 2 spaces.
If you are a varsity athlete, move up 1 space. If you are an all-region in a sport, move up another space.
If you earned a D in an academic course at the end of your junior year, move back 3 spaces.
If you wrote a letter to the college admission officer explaining the extenuating circumstances surrounding a grade of D, move up 1 space.
If you decided to protect your GPA by not taking AP classes offered at your school, move back 2 spaces.
If you are in the top % of your graduating class, move up 2 spaces.
All right.
All right, so
Any
can you raise up your
surprises?
GPAs?
Feedback? Yeah.
Thoughts from the audience?
We hear
Thank
it.
you for
I heard it.
volunteers.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for volunteering. Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Any surprises? Did anything surprise anyone? The 4 was in the back. Right. Cheated. Oh, and actually, all of these situations are, those situations with the plagiarism and having a great essay, and a lot of those individual circumstances are ones that we've seen and really do have an impact on the application process. Anything else to say about that before we move on?
Any surprises about the differences between psychology and pre-med moving back and Greek as a major moving forward? Does anyone have like a thought about that? No, go ahead.
Major, might make you stand out more than, sociology.
So she said a special major such as Greek might make your application stand out more than something general as psychology, and that can typically happen. And that changes year to year, college to college, but that is accurate.
Well, and just to add to that, the pre-med is on there because it's so extremely competitive, right? So they're a little bit different, even though they're lumped together.
Any other thoughts before we move on to our fascinating presentation? Oh. We're going to shut that. That'd be great. All right, so that was fun. This might be a little bit more on the dry side, so I apologize. But we wanted to get into and start preparing you guys for what actually goes into applications. So the student part of the application process and the materials are all here. So I'm going to start to go through them and start talking about a few key words that you're going to hear over and over again. So how many of you have heard, how many of you, this is your first time? Raise your hand if this is your first go around. All right, so there's a lot of you in here. All right, so I want to assure you that you guys will get through it. Raise your hand if this is like second, third. Can you tell them that it's going to be okay? You assure them? It's going to be okay. So, all right. You're going to hear common application or common app quite frequently. That's a big general application that students fill out, and they can send it off to over 600 colleges, institutions that accept it. So they fill out one application, send it off. Some schools that don't take it, they'd have to do what's called their institutional application. So for instance, Endicott or Salem State, they're not a part of the Common App, so they have their own application that you have to fill out. Those are just two examples. So for Common App, most likely your student, your child, our student, will be filling that out. Either or both, what goes into that application is basically very similar. So there's the biographical information, the family information. So it's your name, your address, you know, your birthday, all of that biographical information is one section of the application. So, you know, your son or daughter might be coming to you asking you for some very basic information. You guys might sit down together to fill out that part. Within the application, they have to list their senior year courses. So this is very important because it is going to be sent off to the schools. They see what they're taking senior year. Come mid-year, if that changes, so if a senior comes to us, one of us, for a course change, whether it's a level placement, going from AP down to ACP or honors, or withdrawing altogether, or changing an elective, or withdrawing from an elective to a study hall, we have to report that to the college. So it's very important that what you list that you're taking your senior year for the full senior year is what you stick with the entire senior year. So you list your senior year courses and the level placements. That's important as well. The next section is your honors and your accomplishments. So there's plenty of seats, come on down. Your honors and accomplishments are any awards that you've received on school level, on the state level, and on the national level. So it's a great opportunity to start thinking about any awards you've received. Hopefully you guys have kept records of all of that stuff. Anything you received at awards night here, or if you've received anything from, you know, the state, National Honor Society will count as that in that section if you guys get inducted in the spring. If you take the Spanish exam or the French exam and you rank in that and receive bronze, gold, silver in that area as well, that counts towards that, or anything else that you've done academically that you've received awards for. So there's a section for that. Then you have an activities list. This list is really important also that you start thinking about. And we help you start thinking about this list by creating a resume in Naviance, which we'll get to in a little bit. This list is really driven by anything you do after 2:30 hits, making sure you don't just go home and play video games, what you do on the weekends. And we take a lot of pride in sitting down with the students and making sure that this list is created by, you know, not only what activities you can provide, they only give you 10 slots, but how you word the activities as well. And Ms. Barnum will speak more to that in a little bit. Probably the biggest piece of the actual application that you're putting forward that speaks to the student is the essay. Essays and supplements are, it's the student's voice. A lot of times we talk about the quantitative pieces and the qualitative pieces of an application. The quantitative pieces are the transcript, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a minute, and your standardized testing, which we're going to talk a little bit more about too. And then the qualitative pieces are, you know, your demonstrated interest, which we'll talk about, letters of recommendation, your activities list, and your essay. So within the application, you submit one essay in the Common App that gets sent to every college that you're submitting to within the Common App. The prompts have not changed. They offer 6 different prompts for you to choose from. They did not change for next year, so what's there this year will be there next year as their offerings. And you choose what prompt you would like to answer, and it's your chance to let you sell yourself, let your voice be heard. You know, it's a story to tell. We always say, you know, Ms. Barnum does a good job at this. It's always, if you're not funny, don't try to be funny. You know, make sure that this is authentic of who you are as a person. When we read them, we ask that this be a part of the package that you're giving to us, that we go through with you, because we want to be able to sit down and pretend that we don't know you, so that we can actually tell you, if I'm a college admissions person, do I get a sense of, do I know you after reading this? Does it read well? I always talk to my students about, you know, trying to use the 5 senses when you're writing your essay. You know, you don't have to be the best writer in the world, but this particular essay should just be something that you are able to let this person know who you are, whether it's an experience. What did you learn from the experience? You can't just talk about the experience. So there's a lot that goes into this essay. Let people see it, let people read it, put eyes on it, but it still needs to be you. There's people out there that go to essay writing coaches. There's, you know, tutors out there for this, and we can tell when they use them, and so can't the colleges. So it really needs to be the student that's driving this essay. A lot of times they share it with us on Google, and we can see all the edits that have been made by these people, or parents, or their friends, and it's alarming. So really take that into consideration. It really just should be driven by the student. Supplements are, do you guys want to add anything about the essay? Okay. And we certainly, everything that we talk about here, we will be talking about, again, senior year, when we have our senior parent night, and we really get into the nitty-gritty of everything as well. So supplements are, some colleges require them, not all, but it might be a smaller version of an essay that's specific to that particular college. So it might be, you know, why Brandeis? And they want to know, you know, why do you want to go to Brandeis? It might seem very simple. And I've seen some very simple answers. Because I love the campus. Because it has the program I want. Does anyone have a response to that particular answer? Anyone think it's a good answer? What? It's not thoughtful. It isn't thoughtful. Could you copy and paste that and put it into YBU? Right. So those are things you have to take into consideration. They want as simple as a question. They don't want a simple answer. They want to know you've done your research. They want to know that you have specific details about Brandeis that you can include in your response. They're looking for a very thoughtful answer to their specific school, that you cannot copy and paste that answer to put it anywhere else to another college. So sometimes the supplement, as simple as it is, it's not such a simple response. Sometimes the supplement could be very quirky. We've seen, where's Waldo? So they're looking for your response to be very quirky back. So their supplements have to be really thoughtful. You have to kind of figure out what they're looking for. So we take a lot of time in helping the students look into these supplements as well. Want to add anything to those?
Yeah, just a quick thought about how is it that you position your supplements if you're thinking about a school that isn't particularly close geographically, or you don't really have an opportunity to visit campus. How do you get a sense of what the fit will be like? Because that's ultimately what the school is looking for in the student. They're looking to see, is that student a good fit for our campus, and are we similarly a good fit for them? And ways that you can kind of explore outside of doing a campus visit or outside of knowing all of the answers would be visiting a school's, not just their admissions pages or their financial aid pages, but their mission. Try to understand what they are trying to accomplish for their students. What is their vision for their organization and the students that are graduating from there? Another place to look would be career services. How many people are graduating? What kinds of careers and paths are they ultimately choosing? Kind of like thinking a little bit more big picture with your sons and daughters. We had a tip once from an admissions director to research a little bit more closely, whether that's through social media groups or through the website, about particular traditions or signatures of that particular college or university that make it really them. And see, you want to do this again, and all of this is about you, the student, in an authentic way. And so, researching that, is this really a good school for you? And these are kinds of ways that you can maybe answer some of that question and be able to explain it then in turn to a college. Because what they don't want to see is, a regurgitation of facts from their website either. They don't want the simple answer, and they don't want to hear just because of the pretty campus, that we read about or see in the movies. So yeah, just that.
This year in particular, I had a student who went on a college visit, met a professor, sat in a class, looked up the professor online, found out the professor had wrote a book, read the book, and his supplement was based on that. So, I mean, that's a lot, but that student really wanted to go to that school, applied ED and got in. So,
So maybe it helps.
It did help. So, I mean, that was a lot, but they went the extra mile and did all of that and got in. One student went, researched the school, and the supplement was all based on the extracurriculars that the school had to offer, because that meant a lot to that student. So maybe sometimes it isn't all based on the academics or the buildings or the geographical area. So it can be a bunch of different things.
Right. Perfect.
So another piece to the application part of this whole thing for you guys, or you're not you guys, take that back. It's not you. It's driven by the student. Is sending the standardized tests. So we'll talk more in depth about SAT, ACT, regardless of whichever they take. You have to send the scores via that, whichever one you take, their website. So whether it's SAT, it would be through College Board. If it's ACT, it's through actstudent.org. So they have to officially be sent through that organization. We do not send them. They do not come from our school. We do not report standardized testing. They're not on the transcript either. It comes through the organization officially. You can report your scores on the Common App. That's a section of the Common App. But officially, every school requires them to come through the organization to which you've taken the test. So College Board or ACT. Okay? And then lastly, another big part of the process are the financial aid applications. So available come October 1st, 2019, so coming up, you can apply for your PIN, or is the actual FAFSA? Is the FAFSA available or just the PIN?
The FAFSA
ID, yeah. So you're going to see two sometimes, maybe just the one FAFSA, depending on what schools your son or daughter are applying to, but potentially two different financial aid forms. So the FAFSA and the CSS profile. So the FAFSA is the financial aid form through the government, and the CSS profile is not the free form through College Board. Do you want to? I'll click. Any questions before I move on?
We have one question, Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so the question is, it's not a free form, so there are two major financial aid applications. One is the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and that's the one that is free. And then the other application is one that you need to pay for. It's called the CSS profile. It's sort of owned by the College Board. But what has happened over the past 30 years is that colleges have decided, in addition to the free application for federal student aid that the government is helping to provide in terms of household income and sort of some general, mostly basic financial pieces of information, the institutions themselves say, it's sort of like the same idea as the supplement for the application. They say to themselves, that's great, we'll take that information. However, we want a little bit more information from you. We want to know how much equity you have in your home. We want to know a little bit more about savings. We want to know a little bit more about student assets, whereas the free application for federal student aid does not have any of those elements on it. And so what Ms. Mazzola is mentioning is that CSS profile not only is much more invasive financially, but it is something you actually have to pay for. And it is also much more time consuming than the FAFSA.
And again, it depends on the colleges that your son or daughter are applying to. That will dictate whether you have to fill that out or not. So always be looking at requirements. When you're doing your research and you finally figure out what schools your son or daughter are applying to, not only are you looking for the requirements for standardized testing, but you're looking at the financial aid requirements as well and deadlines for each. The one thing I will say about the financial aid applications is, regardless of whether you think you're going to qualify or not, and it doesn't matter, I have, thank goodness I have money set aside, or Grandma Jane set aside money for Sally, so we're all set. It's in your best interest just to fill out at least the FAFSA, because when you do not, you're sometimes not even qualified for merit scholarship through colleges if you don't fill out the FAFSA. So it's always in your best interest just to fill it out to at least be in contention for the merit scholarship through each college.
So is it safe to say that if you're interested in any financial aid at all, you must fill out the FAFSA?
Correct.
Yes.
And if you're going to a more expensive private school and you have assets, they definitely want you to fill out the CS. They require you to fill out the CS.
Correct.
So just to
Yeah, just
repeat
repeat
that for
that.
anyone following along at home. So the question is, so if you want to be eligible for any aid, you must fill out the FAFSA, and that is a correct yes. And for those more expensive, generally private institutions, they are also asking for the CSS profile. And again, all those things are posted on their websites. And in terms of financial aid, all of the colleges are required to post a net price calculator on their financial aid pages, so you can kind of estimate right now how much you would be eligible for in aid. And just to clarify, the merit aid, there are two types of financial aid. And financial aid is a very large umbrella. It doesn't necessarily mean free money or loans. It's kind of everything under that umbrella. There is need-based aid, so based on those financial aid applications that you submit, and then there's merit-based aid, purely awarded based on student merit, largely from GPA, transcripts, strength of curriculum, and standardized test scores. So in some ways, we will talk about this in a second about the standardized test. and they are important. They are not everything, but with regard to financial aid, some students have received an award letter in the fall for an early action or early decision application, but they didn't quite meet the criteria for the merit aid because they needed a higher score on the ACT or SAT, and so the student is then motivated to kind of go back and take that test one more time. So it does have financial aid implications too. Okay, should we move on?
Yeah,
Jeez,
I'm
Louise.
I'm
We're going to
moving
keep
right
you till
on.
10.
All right,
kidding.
moving on as quickly as possible. So the school's part, hi guys. Swampscott High School's part in the application, what we send for materials is the most probably important piece besides the actual application is the transcript. So we send the initial transcript right when the application gets sent out from the student. We send an initial transcript. We send a transcript at mid-year, and then we send the final transcript to whatever school they are actually attending. So when we're talking about the transcript, we are talking about a document that has the list of classes that the student has taken, the level, and then the final grade that they've received each year, freshman, sophomore, and then junior year. So junior year is that last full year that they have had classes. It then will have senior year just listing the classes that they've taken, and depending on when they are applying, it might have quarter one grades, it might not, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It also will report the GPA and the rank. So what is important about the transcript, and why do college admissions care so much about the transcript? Basically, it tells a story of the student from freshman year through junior year and potentially senior year. It shows the level of courses they've taken, how many, the rigor of the courses they've taken, how many APs and honors classes. Did that go up from freshman to junior year? Did it go down? Is there a story why it went down? And that's where the guidance counselor can come in with their letter of recommendation. Is there a positive grade trend? So maybe freshman year didn't start out so well, but it's on this positive upward trend. And that's another piece of where the guidance counselor comes in with their letter and talks about that. It just really, it talks about, did they start off with ACP freshman year and take a few honors sophomore year, and then, maybe an AP senior year. So there's a lot that the transcript can tell to an admission counselor. They also look at it and compare it to the school profile, which we send, which talks about Swampscott as a community. It talks about, the trend of SAT scores, what AP and honors classes that we offer, and so they can compare it to seeing what the student took. We offer, say, 23 honors classes. How many did they take? We offer, 15 AP classes. How many did the student take? So it really tells a story to the admissions counselor as far as rigorous courses and positive grade trends. So, any questions about the transcript? Okay. In addition to us sending the transcript, we send a counselor written evaluation. Like I just said, we talk a lot about the student as, what's gone on over the past 3.5 years. That's why it's so important to get to know your guidance counselor. Right, Jared? I love him. And, we give insight to everything that's gone on, as much as the student wants us to share. But we talk about a lot. We talk about, their character and what they're involved in and anything that they've gone through. How can we help tell their story on their transcript? And, so it's really great to get to know the students, and we do a good job of that through our seminars and our course selection meetings, and anytime somebody just pops in and talks to us and says hi, and, they're having a bad day, they come in, and all of that stuff. So it's really great to get to know the kids. We also fill out a common application school report, so we have to fill out, what are our first things first words that come to mind when we think about the kids. We fill out a common app recommendation form, and it's kind of a scale that we have to rate them on as far as, their character and their academic performance, and, there's a lot that goes into it. And then we fill out this, we have the school profile that we also send out. So there's a lot of materials that go into it. That's why next year when we talk to you as senior parents, there's deadlines to meet so that we can get all of this stuff out to colleges on time. The teacher sends their letter of recommendation and also an evaluation of the student as well. So, you know, when we meet with the students in a couple weeks for their junior seminars, we're going to ask them to start thinking about teachers that they're going to ask for letters of recommendation. We typically say they need 2 teachers that they would like to ask by the end of this year. We say it's great to ask a junior year teacher because that's the last full year that the teachers they will have is junior year teachers, but it's really anyone that they have the best relationship with, that know them so well that they're gonna write, you know, a great story about them. So that's something to start thinking about and have your son or daughter start thinking about as well.
Okay, I'm going to cover the application options and timeline. So when the fall of senior year comes around, there are some varying deadlines of when students are able to apply to colleges. So the first one is called early action. That is when, so the first 2 actually, early action and early decision, those happen earlier in senior year, hence the name. The normal deadline for those is usually November 1st. So this means that you're applying to the college using the common application that Julie talked about, and you've sent all your pieces, and your application is complete and mailed to the college electronically by November 1st. And the beauty of, the benefit and beauty of doing an early application is that you get your results earlier. So usually by the holiday break or soon into early January, you will be getting your admissions decisions. And so it's been a really fun fall in our office in the past month or 2, getting the students coming down, giving us positive news, you know, that they're hearing back from some schools. And it doesn't mean that their list of 10 schools that they've heard back from, but just having 1 or 2 acceptances is nice to have the students take a deep breath and put that news in their back pocket until they get all their decisions. But the early timeline is not for every student, so I'll cover that in a minute. But for those, you know, for some students, that's the right move. So the difference between early action and early decision, early action means you are taking action early, you are applying early, you receive your admissions decisions early. However, you do not need to make a decision until May 1st. So you can get all your admissions decisions, figure things out, get your financial aid packages, figure out what works for you, and then by May 1st, you are submitting a deposit to one college. Early decision, on the other hand, that is when you have fallen in love with a school and they offer early decision and you have decided this is the one school for me. I've talked to my parents, we can afford this financially regardless of what the financial aid office submits to me with a package, and we would like to apply early decision. If you are then admitted for early decision, you are bound by contract to attend that college. So in the early decision packet, there's a form that's filled out where the student signs that they agree to this, the parent signs, and then we as the counselor also have a signature in that area. So it may seem like you have the choice between early action, early decision. Usually it's the college will tell you what they offer. So some of the more selective schools often only have early decision. So you either are applying and committing to them if you get in, or you're waiting until the regular decision, which I'll talk about in a minute. So Emily is our data guru, and she ran a lot of statistics for us. Over half of our students this year submitted at least one early action application, and 15% of the senior class elected to do at least, well, one early decision application. So it is a great option. So what kind of student would be eligible to do this early application timeline? So these are students who have a strong transcript. They feel the end of junior year has given a great picture of who they are as a student. They don't need quarter 1 grades of senior year to prove themselves to the colleges. They have had either a stable trend or an upward trend, and they feel that their GPA and the course and the grades that they've received through junior year tell their story enough. And they've spent the summer and they've spent September and October really meeting with us as counselors, getting all those pieces together that Julie talked about, and they feel really ready to go for November 1st. You know, if a student walks in our office on October 15th and says they really haven't begun the process, they're not a good candidate for early action, and that's okay. So we have had, you know, about half and half. So we still, you know, it's the end of January now, so we are just finishing up with those seniors that elected for the regular decision timeline. Early decision 2 is that binding commitment, however, it's in the January timeline. So you are able to commit to the college if admitted, but it's in the January 1st, January 15th timeline. So you're able to show the college that you're very, very interested and that you will attend if admitted, but it does give you that fall if you need quarter 1 grades or if you need more time to get things in order. The regular decision, that is probably what all of us grew up with. That is the traditional application deadlines of usually January 1st, January 15th, February 1st. And so that's what some of our students have just gone through. And usually all of our students have a mixed bag. Some of them do early action a few and regular decision a few. But you know, it's just you have the fall of senior year to get your act together and get those applications in. And rolling admission, that means things happen on a rolling basis in the admissions office. All the ones that I've already talked about, the admissions office waits until the deadline hits to then go into the applicant pool and start opening files. So if a student applies on October 1st and then another one applies on October 31st for an early action deadline of 11/1, the person who applied on October 1st has no benefit because they're waiting until the entire applicant pool has applied by November 1st to then start reviewing. However, in the rolling admission, as soon as they receive a completed application, they will open your file and begin reviewing you, and usually they get results within 3 to 4 weeks. So that's nice too. So, you know, not as many colleges have that rolling admission option, but that is nice because when the student's ready to go, they can get that almost instant decision result. Any questions about this? Okay. So standardized test scores, both Emily and Julie have touched on this a little bit, and I will just preface what I'm about to say with we are tacking on to our January 7th presentation, where we had Drew Halpern come from Summit, which is a private organization that does SAT tutoring. He did a very informative presentation. Some of the extra handouts that he had given us were in the back tonight. So that information is on our blog. All of the notes we took that evening are on our blog, and Emily has a link to the, even we filmed the event, so that is all available for you. So I'm going to cover it briefly, but if you want to get really into the nitty-gritty of all this stuff, please link back to his presentation because it's very thorough. Okay, so SAT or ACT, which one should you choose? That's often the first question that people ask. So colleges accept both of these exams equally. They don't care. You don't need to take both. You need to send whichever one is best for you and whichever one you score better on. You know, when thinking about which one to do, the tests are very, very similar now. SAT went through an overhaul a couple years ago, so we do not feel, and Drew, you know, agreed with us, that you don't need to prep for both exams and take both exams in order to figure this out. There are so many free practice tests and resources out there. And we even have listings in the back, free practice tests by Summit that are coming up. Have students take advantage of those free resources and online resources to try to figure out what the exams are like and which one you like better. We also are giving you, in our handouts for tonight, the differences between the two, so you can kind of go through and see what you like better. In a nutshell, SAT has longer reading passages and expects students to, you know, take a longer time reading through those passages and being more thoughtful about those answers. ACT is, back to SAT, they have some open response and some no calculator sections. ACT is strictly multiple choice, and Drew really stressed that ACT, there's a lot of questions and not a lot of time, so you need to be able to work quickly. So it benefits the students to try to see which ones they like better by using the free practice resources, and then whichever one they score better on, we recommend focusing on that one test and pursuing that, because again, colleges accept both of them equally. In regards to taking, how many tests should I take and when should I take, it's all perfect timing that we're meeting with you in January of senior year, because the spring of junior year, the spring of junior year and the fall of senior year are really when these tests need to be taken. So it was interesting, and it's what we've always said, but Drew backed us up, that he said early and often is not the motto with testing. He said your success with tests and your scores are going to correlate with the age of the student, the maturity of the student, and the time spent in school. You don't want to take the SATs at the beginning of junior year because of all the math that you're learning junior year. You want to wait until you're strong and that you've had enough time to digest all this and practice all this. So we recommend taking the tests, whichever one you decide, 2 to 3 times. So part of your job as being in January of junior year is to plan out your timeline for the rest of the months left before you apply. So you can get on these websites, find out when they offer the tests, and start planning out, okay, when are my 2 to 3 times going to be? March is a popular time for some SAT takers, and then we at Swampscott High School are a host site in May. So the first Saturday in May, we host the SAT. So many of our students take advantage of that because it's nice to come take a test at a school that you're familiar with. They'll probably know the proctor because it's one of our teachers, one of our colleagues, and it's kind of perfect timing because it's the end of junior year. But you know, we meet with the students in junior seminar February 4th, 5th, and 6th. And at the end of those small group sessions, we will be encouraging the students to come make individual meetings with us. So in that individual meeting, the 3 of us will really listen to the student, find out what they're doing, look at the transcript, talk about the timeline and the path, and we can help tailor each family to what your 2 to 3 times timeline would look like. But oftentimes it would be maybe 2 times in the spring of junior year, and then there's always, they just added an August test date for both ACT and SAT, which is nice because you could take the August test date and still apply for a November 1 deadline. And there's also an October test date. So many of our seniors opted for the October, because if you took it twice and you're not super happy with that score, some of them opted for a 3rd time just to see what would happen. So again, we can work with you individually, but that's kind of overall what to do. And then some students get really disheartened when their scores just aren't reflective of who they are as a student. So you know, if you have a B GPA or a B plus or an A minus, and then your scores just don't really reflect that you're a strong student in school, that can be really disheartening for students. And that's where the test optional schools come in. Many schools are now realizing that the standardized tests are sometimes not a good reflection of who the student is or their potential or their ability. And so they're jumping onto the bandwagon with test optional, which is just music to our ears because it just gives so many more options. So that means that the colleges are not holding anything against you, but they are not taking the standardized test scores into consideration when they review your application. So all the pieces that Julie talked about, they are just going to look at those, and they are not going to hold against you the fact that you're not sending standardized tests. A good rule of thumb is, do I send or do I not send to a test optional school? There's definitely resources out there where we can find the mid-range and the averages. So if your student is in the average range of test scores or above, certainly go ahead and send. But if your student falls below the averages, then it would make sense to withhold. And that's the website that we can all link this to you, and it's linked on our presentation, but that's the website to get the list of all test optional schools in the country. SAT subject tests, a limited number of colleges require and recommend these. These are 1-hour exams that are testing you on a specific topic, such as history or math or biology. So some of the more selective colleges in the United States are going to require or recommend SAT subject tests. So when a student signs up for an SAT subject test date, they have 3 hours, and each of the tests is an hour. So you could go into an SAT subject test and sit for 3 subject tests on one test date. But again, please do your research, talk to your counselor. When you're building your list of colleges, I would sample even now, go to some websites and see what they require, because it's I think less than 10 schools in the country require these, so I don't want you to think that, oh my goodness, my child needs to take the regular SAT and the subject test. That's probably not the case, but just to protect yourself, work with your counselor and check out some websites to see what colleges you're considering require for standardized testing. And then we really find that prepping for these exams is essential for students to do well. Just as you wouldn't walk in cold to the midterm exams that the students had this week, we really tell the students, please don't walk in cold to the SATs or the ACTs. Prep is essential. And there's so many different variations of prep. You can spend money to go to one of these private tutors and one of these organizations, or if that's just not in the plans for the family, there's so many free resources. So it runs the gamut, but there are many, there's really no excuse not to at least prep using the websites that are free, because it just benefits the students so much to spend some time doing that. And lastly, Julie touched on this, but this is the student responsibility. They must send the official their official scores from the organizations to the schools. That is not something the counselors handle. Any questions about standardized testing?
All right, you're up.
Any questions about anything at this point? Have we sufficiently overwhelmed you? Okay, just a couple more things. So like I said earlier, there are a lot of moving parts, and we'll try to go through this quickly. You're going to hear from us again. The students are going to hear from us again. And the beauty of this is you can just watch this over and over again on YouTube. I want to pause for a second because it looks like I had one question. Yeah, go ahead.
If you do that early thing,
Yeah.
like favorite school, and they don't pick you, do you then go into the regular pool?
That's a great question. So the question is, if you do the early application, did you mean early decision?
Yeah.
Or either?
Where you're like, this is my school.
Yeah, so in either case, if you do early action or early decision, kind of what are the options for result in addition to acceptance? So generally speaking, schools will accept you. Largely in the EA pool, they will defer if they just aren't sure, which means they are moving you off or deferring you to the regular applicant pool where your file gets reviewed again with that particular pool. But in some instances, it's less common, but in some instances they will send a deny result as well. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, so we've heard a little bit about the transcript and the quantitative piece of the transcript and the SAT scores or the ACT scores, some of that like raw data, which doesn't really flesh out the student particularly well. And then we have the counselor recommendation or evaluation, the teacher evaluation. In addition to that, the students will talk about their activities on the Common Application or the institutional app, and then provide the essay. Those kinds of things, those qualitative elements of the application will really, really paint a more three-dimensional picture of the student. And that's the stuff, again, that's really kind of fun for the admissions committees to go over and to read about. It really does make the students human. And so one of the ways that students can kind of think about their application is, who am I? What kind of angle am I presenting here? If you're thinking about it from sort of a marketing perspective, what is it that I want them to remember when they read my application? And this is important because college admissions committees are charged with developing a well-rounded student body. So subsequently, they're not on the search for many well-rounded students. Of course, they will want some of that in their applicant pool. But they're going to be looking to build that well-rounded student body from a lot of different angles. So they'll be looking, in part from an application that's very strong in service or leadership, applications and students that are particularly strong in athletics or in drama. And so all of the institutional priorities will help govern how the admissions committees will review those applications, but it helps the student to kind of think about, what is my angle? Have I been spending the last, 14 years of my life going through and doing more service things with my family, or have I been spending my life doing more athletic things, and how do you position that? So our advice to the students based on what we're hearing from admissions counselors is to specialize and to focus your application and to consider a theme. So one of the ways that they can do that, will be through their activities section on the Common App or the institutional application, and also with their resume. So Julie mentioned that there were only 10 available fields on the Common Application, so there are only 10 opportunities for the students, and in many cases that's plenty, only 10 opportunities to list the activities that the student has been involved in after high school ends. So those kinds of things, again, could be anything from drama to sports to childcare. As you saw in our activity, there was a student who after school had childcare responsibilities, and that is considered an extracurricular activity. It's part of the student's application and sort of lends itself well to talking about maturity, independence, self-reliance, that type of thing. So our job, and kind of how we see our job in terms of the resume development and the activities list, is really helping the students think about what is that story and that angle that they're trying to talk to the admissions committees about. So when we think about the resume and we look into the activities list, when we write with the students, when we help them think about I've been on the track and field team and done outdoor or cross country for the past 3 years, and this year I'm a captain. What kinds of activities are involved in that beyond just sort of the running piece and participation in a team, to really think about was there leadership development within that? Were there fundraising activities? Was there any expectation or responsibility in helping younger athletes, for example? So really kind of thinking outside the box, thinking really big picture about the activities in the resume and how to present. The resume that we will ask the students to start developing will be important in a number of different areas as they go through this process. It will be important for sharing with the teachers as they get ready to write a recommendation. It'll be important for the counselors as we prepare to do their evaluation. It will ultimately be an option for some of the colleges for the students to upload their resume. Some colleges don't require it, although we like to think of the word optional as opportunity. So if you have something that's optional, we suggest to the students to take that opportunity, whatever it is, to sort of show more about yourself. So if you have an opportunity to upload a resume, we would strongly recommend that you would do that. And there was one other thing I wanted to say, and I just lost my train of thought. Any questions about that?
I was just going to say, too, as far as positioning the application and having a theme, not only does it, your resume, the activities, it links to the letter of recommendation, it links to your essay as well, and potentially your major, too. So, as far as that positioning and kind of like marketing yourself, that's where it all kind of leads to. And so when we're talking about, a lot of my juniors this year have come to me and saying, what should I do with my summer this year? And so I say, this stuff I talk about. Well, what have you done so far? What are you thinking about for majoring in college? These are the things I'm already thinking about in my head to get them start thinking about for their college application, and trying to link it all together so that they can position themselves with a theme. So, if it's something to do with wanting to be a veterinarian, I'm saying, are you already working with animals? Are you getting into, shadowing a vet hospital? Are you working at the volunteering at the Northeast Animal Shelter? Things like that. Any way that you can kind of align yourself to have that theme be connected with any of these things up here, that's what we're kind of talking about.
Great, thank you. So this kind of brings us to, well, what should we be doing right now? You leave tonight, what kinds of things should we be focusing on? And again, we'll be speaking about this with the juniors in a couple weeks. Continue to focus on junior year courses. Hopefully students have finished strong with their midterms. There is no substitute for a strong transcript, so you can have as many extracurricular activities listed on your resume, but that transcript is the most important part of the application in terms of the academics, and that really is where the students should be focusing a lot of their time. We're coming up on course selection again, so that's the process of students meeting with the counselors. We all meet one-on-one. We will, this is a very important year, as Julie mentioned earlier, in sort of thinking about what does that senior year course list potentially look like that is, considered to be, helpful in thinking about your major or career. It's totally okay if the student doesn't know what they want to do at this point, but if they do, the course selection piece can be very, very helpful. Colleges like to see that you're continuing to take on appropriate academic risks, and that appropriate academic risk looks really different for every student, hence why we're meeting with them individually. So we'll be going over that, and we will encourage that. Again, kind of tying back to the game, the student that's trying to protect their higher GPA is actually at a disadvantage in not choosing that higher level course for that challenge. And so colleges are really considering that as part of the student's evaluation. And then, we'll also be creating the standardized testing timeline with the students. So that's something, certainly ask the students to come see us. We will be, promoting that same idea that we'd love to see them before the end of the year, before they go away for the summer. It feels like a long ways away, but it does come so quickly. But again, we will have opportunities to sit with them both in junior seminar and in course selection, so we'll see them again a couple times. And then researching schools. So researching schools, you can do in a couple of different ways. The students, we will recommend certainly that they start with Naviance Family Connection, because it's a great tool. As I said, it's the web-based program for college and career exploration. So we'll do a very brief overview of it just so you can kind of see what we're talking about. But it will show, we import all of the data for the students, and so it will plot students on a graph of GPA and standardized test scores, and will show you as a great jumping off point based solely on those two variables, what is the sort of the likelihood of a positive admission result. And it will plot you on a graph. It will show you GPA averages. It talks about all of the interesting things about the school. You can do a bunch of searches on it. So that's one tool that we have available to us. It is particularly rich in terms of data because we continue every year to track very closely all of our information and make sure that the information that's in there is accurate. And so it's all contextually about Swampscott. So when they're looking at those numbers, they aren't global averages, they're Swampscott averages, which is again, sort of just a piece of the puzzle. We're not necessarily saying you should only look at Naviance, but it is a very helpful piece of information when evaluating kind of what schools would help me develop a list of reach schools, target schools, and likely schools. So if you think about planning, our strongest recommendation is that you have that range of schools. So a reach school would be sort of a more selective school for you. You want a few target schools on your list, those that really closely match your academic credentials. And then again, some likely schools. And I would say, those numbers vary from student to student, but I would say about an average is somewhere between 8 and 10 schools for our students for the past few years. And so that might look like 3 in the reach category, 3 in the target or match category, and sort of 3 in the likely category where you feel pretty confident that you're going to be accepted to those schools. So that's one way you can do some of that research is through Naviance. Another way is for students to really get out and go see schools. We're very fortunate in the Northeast to have access to a lot of campuses, so we recommend students go and with 2 things in mind. One, keeping an open mind. I think some students have a sense of what they think they want, whether that's I definitely don't want a small school or I definitely don't want a city school. And we really encourage them to keep an open mind as they go through this process, because I think that the process is really a process of self-discovery in itself, and sometimes they surprise even themselves with what they ultimately end up liking and feeling really connected to. So they're really, it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to get on some campuses. A great time to do that would be February break or April break. We are on vacation, but the college students are still on campus, so you can kind of get a sense of the culture and the climate of the school. And for the students, it can be really helpful to kind of say, like, can I see myself kind of connecting with the culture here? What is the vibe of the students? Do I like the way that it's set up? I heard that it's at a city, but it doesn't really feel like a city because there's really like an identified campus here, or I love the school spirit, and that feels like something that I really connect to. So those types of experiences for the students are invaluable. So as many as the student schedule will allow would be very helpful to them. Also, students can do that during the summertime, but with the students not being on campus, it just has a little bit of a different flavor. So that's something to consider. We will have colleges come in the fall to do what we call college visits. So the colleges come here. It's often the admissions counselor who is assigned to read and help make decisions on the student's application. So they kind of give that same overview or informational session to the students directly here in our offices. So we have somewhere between 70 and 80 schools come every year. They will talk about academic programming, they'll talk about residential life, financial aid, they'll talk about the actual application process, so that can be really helpful. A way that students, if they're going to visit schools, I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier, if they're going to visit schools, we recommend students go on the admissions homepages. They'll see all those opportunities for open houses, for campus tours. Sometimes they'll have more sort of interesting or fun experiences like go and sit in on a class or go visit with a professor. So students can kind of research any of those types of things. With all of those experiences, the colleges are taking note of the students' level or extent of interacting with the college. So they call this demonstrated interest. So it's something that the college admissions committees, not always, but in many cases, are monitoring. Whenever a student goes on a campus tour, goes to one of our college visits here, interacts sometimes with the social media site, they track all of that information. And they call that demonstrated interest, the extent to which a student is demonstrating interest in this particular school. Some schools have software that tracks all of this as early as right after the PSAT sophomore year, and they can see every single time a student receives the email, opens the email, clicks on the link, goes to the website, interacts to some extent on the site, and they can see all these things. And so that ultimately is something that the student should be doing for themselves because they need to know about the school and is that school a good fit for them. But again, sort of going back to that idea of fit, the college admissions committees are also trying to evaluate, is this student a good fit for us? They say that it's their absolute first choice, and yet they haven't visited campus, they didn't go to the college visit, they haven't signed up on social media, for example. So those are ways that both parties really benefit from. The student benefits from it in terms of doing individual research so they can find out what's good for them, and the college benefits from that also to see who's a good fit for their community. So focusing on the classes right now, coming up with an appropriate testing timeline, researching schools, working on the essay. So for the past couple years, this has been awesome, actually. And even just getting the wheels turning, we've collaborated with the English department, and they've allowed that one of the summer assignments will be the college essay. So the students actually have an opportunity to write the essay, and that forces them to not procrastinate, so they have something on paper. Whether or not ultimately that's what they choose to submit as their college essay is kind of up to them, and we can talk about that with them. But it really forces them to sit down and kind of think about what is it that I'm going to talk about in the essay. So we 100% recommend that the students look at the prompts, think about what it is they might write about. It doesn't have to be a terrible hardship. The students shouldn't overthink this idea of the essay. It's really just to hear their voice. And in the handouts online, and we'll send an email blast with all the information, but in the handouts online is included, both Johns Hopkins and Hamilton College have examples of essays that worked. So it will show you kind of what we're talking about. In one of the examples, it's a student talks about how the school is compared to, I think it was a tortilla or like a taco or something like this, or a wrap or something like this. And so it was just a fun way for her not only to talk about kind of who she was, that she was creative, but she was connecting all of the pieces back to this idea of a wrap sandwich. So it doesn't have to be something so terrible that happened in your life. And many students are fortunate enough not to have anything horrible happen. They've led a relatively peaceful existence, and that is perfectly great. And so those are the school. Our message is don't overthink it. The school isn't looking for something huge. They're just looking for the students to be themselves.
And in the game, does anyone remember what happened to the student with the sports metaphor in the essay? What happened? 2 steps back.
Yeah. So, and Julie's point really is about the level of originality in those essays. The essay about sports as a metaphor for life. It's the top of the 8th, and the sweat's dripping down my brow. And Ninth.
9 innings.
Okay. So as you can see, I'm not an athlete. Anyway, So, okay, you get it. Be original. Just be yourself. That's the point in this whole process, is just be authentic. And as much as you hear us talk about all these things that the admissions committees are looking for, I think the selective colleges and universities give this process a really bad reputation. Students will get into a number of different schools and have a lot of choices that they're excited about. In looking at our senior exit survey from last year, 99% of our students say yes, they are excited about their final choice and they're really happy. So again, in our handouts, you'll see a lot of their comments. Some of them are tips and recommendations, and some of them are what they're excited about doing. And as you can see, they do have so many different paths and desires and goals, and that really kind of comes to life there. So just the point is just be you, no matter what. I'm trying
All right.
to hurry, I know.
Well, no, I think let's get to our guests.
Okay, let's introduce our guests. Okay, so today, come on up. Today, they're going to give a brief overview. Yes, they're here to answer questions. So this is Denise. No, you are not Denise. This is Ashley Marston and her mom, Denise. I'm not going to tell your story for you because I think that's up to you. So you can kind of talk about, if you wouldn't mind, a little bit about your experience with the college application process and or just sort of like planning and thinking about where you wanted to go, what was helpful, what wasn't helpful, what you would recommend, what surprised you, if anything. Recommendations on things not to worry about, because you can see they're a bit glazed over. We've overwhelmed them. They're ready to get out of here. So so if you could talk about some of your advice, and then as a mom, Denise, if you can just like similarly kind of give those recommendations, what it's like to kind of be a parent going through this and anything that was helpful for you as a parent, and then we'll open it up to question and answer. All right, I'll let you go first.
I started the process a little late just because I really wasn't sure about what I wanted to do, exactly where I wanted to apply, and it took me a really long time to decide that. But I ended up applying all early action, and that's just because when my brother, he's a sophomore in college now, when he was applying to colleges, he applied regular decision, but for me, it seemed less stressful just to get everything over with early and to know where I'm going and have more time to decide. But that's just in my opinion. So I applied all early action. Some of my schools didn't actually have a regular decision, an early action option, so I just applied to them anyway, and I'm still waiting on the two of them that are regular decision. But for my essay, I think I rewrote it like 3 or 4 times because...
3 or 4?
I rewrote it a lot because the first essay that I wrote, I was passionate about it and I really liked it, but I think that it was a bad representation of myself. So I ended up rewriting it, and I really liked the way the second one turned out. But yeah, overall, it's really not as stressful as people make it out to be. It goes by pretty fast, and it seems like you have a lot of stuff to do, but once it's over, and like it comes to fall senior year, and you're just like, you're over and you're waiting. So, do you want to say anything?
Sure. Well, when you said it's not stressful, it's very stressful, because after I came out of this meeting and I went to the other meeting with how to sign on to everything, I had a list. I said, we got to do this on time. I just made her sit down every night, and it was hard for me to not let her do it. I wanted to get it done, so I was on the computer trying to do her likes and her dislikes and what she likes at college, but I had to take a step back because it's not me. She's a student. She has to do it herself. And as much as I wanted her to go get everything done quickly, it was up to her to make those decisions. And I told her that she needed to utilize the resources that we have at the school. Guidance counselors, awesome. You need to use them. Tell your student, your child to go every day. They've helped so much. Seriously, I would email her on the weekend, say, I don't know what to do. She didn't get her SAT scores. Is something due? I'd get an email like Sunday night. Not to say that you're going to answer all the emails, but I think the important thing is to take the summer, have the student think about what they really want to do, visit some schools, take some time to do it, work on your essay. It takes a lot longer than you think. She changed her subject when she was 75% done with her first one, and it takes a long time. We actually hired somebody to help her rewrite it. It's just, It was very stressful for September and her starting her senior year, but honestly, by the end of October, when we got through all the financial, all the Naviance, you sit down, you go through Naviance, you have the student look at what kind of school do I like? Do I want big? Do I want small? Do I want to go far? Do I want to stay close? It calculates everything for you, and it narrows it down to what are the colleges that you might like and apply to. So I think doing everything early, and for her, I think her getting everything done early, it's less stress because now we're just waiting. We've heard from 7 out of 10 schools that she applied to, and one of her reach schools, we just got deferral. It's not a no, but they are asking for her mid-year grades. So don't slack as a senior, because
Great advice.
do not slack. I mean, even with her for her midterms, she is a very good studier, and she was staying up late. And I said, you know what, you're doing great. Pull it back a notch. You're too stressed. You're a senior, but same exact reason, because Northeastern is going to look at her next grades. I said the school, I'm sorry. I wasn't supposed to say. Anyway, that's my advice. I mean, you can help them, but they have to do the work.
Great advice. Any questions?
Yeah, come on, you have a question.
All right. Well, you guys told great stories, I think, and great advice from the student perspective, from the parent perspective, I think. So thank you guys for coming and sharing.
So cute. I think if anything, those are just like great takeaways anyway. We can say the same things till we're blue in the face, but you know, I hear about like being prepared and kind of starting the process, if anything, about planning early. And you know, Julie kind of touched on this earlier when she said, I forget what you said, when you said you, but you were like, no, I don't mean you, I mean them, the student. And this, it is really hard to let the students take the reins, but kind of think of yourself more as their coach and their cheerleader along the way as you help guide them and let them do the work. Because at the end of the day, it really is about them. And they'll feel more invested and connected if they have more skin in the game than you do. So anyway, thank you all so much for coming.